Hello, listeners and citizens of Broncos country. My name is Ilan Diaz, and welcome to a brand new episode of Broncos Talk. I am joined by my co-host, Richie. Richie, how are you today, sir?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Trying to keep up with all the free agency news. Welcome, everybody, into the chat. Albert, Miguel, Chad, and everybody that's coming in. We'll try to get to all your comments and questions about today's show. Mohammed, yo, what's going on? Welcome to the show. Make sure you got make sure you get your comments, questions in. We can answer them. We'll try to get to everything going on that's Broncos news. So if you're in here today, make sure you get the questions in. If you're listening to us on audio, make sure you hit that subscribe button at MHRT Podcast. You follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. So, Rich, the big news coming out of Dove Valley is the re-signing of one Von Miller, the man that everybody was on pins and needles, hoping that we would get another year. It kind of gave me flashbacks of after we won the Super Bowl, and everybody. It was kind of like the same feeling. What was going to happen with Von? Was he going to get a new contract, and what happened? So now that we know that Von is going to be a Bronco, hopefully for life. I think it helps everybody in Broncos country breathe a little bit better, and it just kind of everybody's not on pins and needles anymore. And unfortunately, I think that Kareem Jackson is going to have to be the sacrifice that the Broncos have to make in order to pay Von Miller his contract money.
Well, his contract for this year is $22.15 million or something like that. So. That's what it counts towards the cap. So by retaining him, we had to ensure that we had that money available to us in order to keep that. By cutting Kareem, we also have now the ability with some more cap dollars available to us to bring in some other people. When you look at where these backup quarterbacks have landed, the veterans, people like Fitzpatrick and Dalton and Tyrod Taylor, all three of them landed right around the $12 million a year mark, which is basically right where Kareem Jackson was going to need to be. So all fingers are kind of pointing, generally speaking, to the direction of George Paton, kind of almost holding true to kind of what some of the rumors have been, which is likely wanting to bring in maybe a veteran guy, although his options are dwindling now. With regards to Vaughn, I'm going to pump the brakes a little bit personally, because picking up his option does not necessarily mean that we are going to keep him on our roster come day one. It means we picked it up. We can still trade him. And so I'm, you know what I mean? Like, it's likely he's going to stick with us, but we can't necessarily immediately say, hey, he's on our team and that's that.
You know what? I hadn't thought about that until you mentioned it, Rich. But in an unlikely scenario, I don't see that happening, because it would be kind of foolish and risque at that for George Payton to go off and trade Von Miller. Because I think if that were the case, he probably would have tried to rework something with Kareem Jackson and kind of give the notion like, hey, we're only going to be able to keep one of you. And, whoever we can get a trade offer for or whatever, then that's where we're going. So, but then again, I could be wrong. And most of the time I don't mind when I'm wrong. But in this one, I don't really. I hope I'm not. I do hope that Von sticks to his word. He's always said he wants to be a Bronco for life. He wants to retire a Bronco. And, hopefully if he ever does decide to pursue a career in coaching, he decides to keep it in Denver. Mohammed Badri, welcome to the show. He says, I don't get why Ronald Darby was a target for Peyton. There were better options. Now, this is a very interesting comment, Rich, because I did hear the name of, what's his name? Mike Hilton, formerly from the Steelers, who's got picked up by the Bengals, and the contract he got with them was just, I believe, $3 or $4 million less than what the Broncos paid for Darby. Now, the only upside I see with Darby, and I'm talking about from the tape that I saw with him from last year, was the fact that the Washington's football team's front line was just, I mean, they were destructive, man. They were amazing. So, and it's pretty much a general rule that when you have a defensive line that's that damn good and they can force the quarterback to make passes, they can make almost any cornerback look, great, because then it just makes the cornerback and safety's job that much easier. So his signing to me is going to bring into question, can the Broncos front line be just as ferocious and intimidating as what Washington has on theirs, where Darby and Callahan can be very, very successful?
I think Chubb with a more competent pass rusher to the other side has the potential. Even if Vaughn doesn't look spectacular stats-wise, he has a reputation, and frankly, the other teams are going to, at least at the beginning of the season, respect the fact that he's on the other side of the field. So I think that does open up a little bit for Chubb to kind of get around the edge. Where I've said this how many weeks now, I still think that our challenges is going to be on the interior of the defensive line. I know that Boggins and I kind of go back and forth on a couple things here in the chat. I hope you're joining us at some point, Boggins. Thank you for joining in when you do. But Draymond Jones, I know that there's a lot of people that really like him, but every time I go back and watch the games, and when I was watching the games last year, especially in 20, that was his year 2 season, I expected to get more push against some of the better teams, and that's where I measure the interior defense against. When we go against quality offensive lines like the Buffaloes of the world, even Kansas City, as much as we may hate our division rival, last year, not this year, last year, they actually had a good offensive line. And I found that Draymond Jones didn't do particularly well in most of those scenarios when we needed him to step up. Once we started moving into where the team there was kind of more just trying to hold on to a lead or whatever the case may be, that's when we started seeing some of the production. But that's not what we were already out of the game at that point. At that point, you don't need that kind of pressure because you can't come back into it.
Yeah, that's very true. Chad Marcellus, loyal fan of the show. Thanks for watching, my friend. He says, if you can't use Philip Lindsay in your offense, you shouldn't be an OC. Now, this is something that's been really it's been pulling at me all freaking day, Rich. It's just like, I don't want the Broncos to give up on the Colorado kid. I mean, I forgot who I heard this morning say how everybody was so hyped up and excited when Philip Lindsay came on the scene just a few years ago. And the fact that Pat Shurmur has not been able to find a scheme where he can use Lindsay is just, I mean, it's just downright wrong. I'll admit that Philip Lindsay did not have the best season last year, getting turf toe, getting a concussion, getting the wrist injury. He's had his injuries, but that's with you can say that with almost any running back. And unfortunately, sometimes some injuries are going to amount more in certain seasons than others. But just because Philip Lindsay was injured the way he was last year, he did not quit. He still went out there and he really tried it. And there were a couple times where even I went on social media and said, hey, look, I do admit, his guts and, his determination to go out there and try to do what he can. But if you're not 100%, you really shouldn't be out there. But just the fact that he went out there and tried to work in a scheme that wasn't really benefiting him should have given him more credit than anything. So I really do hope that the Broncos that nobody comes and picks up Lindsay and that somehow he can find a way to stay on this team. But the fact that he got tendered in the way he is now, that almost seems unlikely to happen.
Well, I think there's a couple things to this. Chad, thank you for joining the show. I appreciate the comment. I don't disagree. Let's just put it that way. I don't disagree. You literally have a running back who had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, which I believe was an NFL record for an undrafted free agent running back, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the reasons, Chad, why you, myself, 6'10" here, we're all kind of echoing some of the same thoughts, is Philip Lindsay was exactly what we all wanted Ronnie Hillman to be, but wasn't.
I remember right? Ronnie Hillman.
Right. So the whole thing that we were looking at Ronnie Hillman, we said we had CJ Anderson, we had Ronnie Hillman. So we had like the thunder and lightning kind of mixed combo kind of deal going. We wanted kind of the quicker, kind of flashy back that could kind of hit the hole and go quick. And then we had the bigger back that was able to just bulldoze people and make it into the end zone. It was really weird because CJ Anderson actually had more shimmy shake to him than I think most people thought he could even muster up at like 240 pounds and like 5'9" or something like that. But Philip Lindsay in this particular scheme, in this particular system, is just not being schemed well for. He also, I think, tried a little too hard to push a hole and not wait for blocks to kind of develop for him. I do believe that was in large part because of our interior offensive linemen. Reisner really did not have a very good first half of the season at all. Most people, if you're watching any of those original games, it's pretty apparent. He did start to improve as the season went on, especially near the end, so good for him. But Cushenberry and Glasgow was a huge disappointment and it did not work out. I as soon as I saw him the first two games, I said, that was a mistake. And then Cushenberry kept on getting pushed back, and he started letting people blow up the middle on the left and right of him. So I think that really hindered Lindsay and kind of forced him to think that he had to force a play and force a hole when there wasn't one. And I think that unfortunately got him hurt because he's a smaller frame guy. And when you have the weight of a 300-pound person on you, when you're that size, you can sometimes get hurt. And running back's a high collision position as well.
Yeah. Let's not forget, he was the catalyst in that very first Chargers game. Right. I mean, without his running touchdown, who knows if the Broncos could have gotten the energy and the motivation to come back and win that game.
Sorry to interject. Don't forget his performance against Kansas City.
Yeah, that one too.
The one thing I think we need to give absolute credit to Philip Lindsay right off. His Kansas City performance there before what's his name, the dirty safety from KC, Sorensen. Before Sorensen did the leading with the head tackle that never got called. Lindsay was killing him.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Mohammed Badri, he says, I think this is Von's last season with the Broncos. We should target on in the early rounds. I'm guessing he means early rounds in the draft. Yeah. So I hope. We're circling back to how we opened the show, Rich. I hope that's not the case. I really do hope that Von decides to stay with Denver even after this season. Depends how much he feels he still has left in the tank. And I actually think that could happen because as Von gets older, he's not going to be able to command a lot of money out in free agency. In terms of, big money contracts, because, every free agency period is different. There's always going to be different players in that category hitting free agency. So I do hope he ends up and stays playing a Bronco. But I don't disagree with the fact that Denver should start targeting, pass rushers in the early rounds. I'm totally for that because I really don't have a lot of. I was really high on Malik Reed when he first came on the scene. What was it? 2 years ago, I think. It was either a year or two. The last time we had a preseason game, I think it was 2019 or preseason season. And last season, when it was his chance to step up, and I've said this before already, Rich, he did have some good games, but he also didn't have the best games. When he had the chance to shine and to go out there and prove a point, I don't think he sent the message all the way home. And the fact that he had to do it without Atachi was in and out most of the season, and Bradley Chubb was struggling as well in certain games. Him and Chubb just couldn't get a rhythm together where, if one was being double teamed, then the other one could take advantage and vice versa. And it was usually Chubb who had the double teams and Malik Reed just couldn't always get home.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Reed. Yeah, I'm kind of. I went back and forth on this actually quite a bit today. I was kind of looking back at kind of what happened. I was looking at a couple of different factors, right? So, where did Vaughn go? What did he do? Like, how long did it last? And I thought it was really interesting that it took until kind of early today-ish kind of deal for them to commit to the Vaughn signing, where it was kind of leaked, where they thought they were going to pick it up. And I agree with you on Reed. I think Reed is a really, really good player, and he has really, really developed. My biggest fear actually with Malik Reed is he seems to be following a somewhat similar path to Shaq Barrett. And I only say that because Shaq had those modest step progressions, just like Malik Reed has shown us. He's getting a little bit better, not quite spectacular. A little bit better, not quite spectacular. And I think when we look back at what we did with Shaq and the fact that we're looking at his money now, so my question to Broncos country now would be, okay, well, Vaughn is making more than Shaq right now. Shaq Barrett is quite a bit younger than Vaughn. Would he not be a player that you might prefer on our team over Vaughn, knowing that you might be able to have him for more years at a higher level of play? I mean, this is all fandom aside. This is more practical approach to this. I mean, he's a Colorado guy too. So, I mean, I think there's a legit kind of discussion to be had there. But in terms of Vaughn, I think the real big telltale sign or telling sign here is going to be, can we further extend them out past this year at a reasonable-ish number? And I think part of it is going to be, where does the salary cap go? Can we have fans in the stands? Can we have some degree of normalcy around football this year? And if that's the case, then the cap should be going up, at which point these teams will have a little bit more breathing room.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, kudos to Tampa Bay for going out there. And, when the coach said at their Super Bowl parade that he was going to keep the team together, I was like, okay, he's going to pick a couple of guys here and there. But, I mean, so far he's been able to do a pretty good job at it. I mean, they're not going to be able to keep everybody. I believe Fournette is on the market. AB's on the market. Suck up their kicker. And I forget who the other player was. But, obviously after any team wins the Super Bowl, all their players just become really, really expensive to keep.
Tampa Bay's been a bit unique, though. A lot of their players, including Tom Brady, have come back to the table to say, let's rework some stuff to make this, the quote that they put together is, let's bring the band back, put the band back together. So I think you're starting to see some uniqueness come out this year, where I think the players they're being realistic. They understand that the cap has actually decreased for the first time probably in their lifetime. I don't think I can ever remember a time where the cap actually decreased rather than increased.
Never.
So So I think this is such a unique situation that I believe these players are understanding the circumstances that they're in. And I think a lot of these players are saying, hey, I sacrificed this year, but then I basically forced the team to guarantee that money for me at the back end so I don't actually lose it. I'm more than willing to do that to try and give us the best opportunity and chance of winning. And we're starting to see like the Tom Brady's and even the deals that the Broncos signed with these other players, like the Darbys and Shelby Harris, when you look at their contracts, they are structured in such a way that it is favorable for our team this year for us to put together a pretty competent roster if we so choose.
Yeah, you know what? So far, Rich, the only move by Peyton that's kind of questionable is the Ronald Darby cornerback signature. And I know we kind of started talking about that at the beginning of the show, but it's interesting because nobody really knows if maybe Elway or Fangio had an input in saying, hey, look, this is the kind of guy that we want to play in Denver. Because for some people, they feel that this is kind of where the Broncos were a year ago with AJ Bouye, except the Broncos gave up a 4th pick for AJ Bouye. And, we were all thinking like, if he comes in and he's in a new scheme and, Vic Fangio is really good at turning most cornerbacks around and using them to, excuse me, to the best of their abilities. So it'll be interesting to see what they can do with Ronald Darby. And granted, Darby was a name that was mentioned in free agency in seasons before when he was with, the Eagles. So Darby was a guy that Elway kind of wanted to bring to Denver, but he didn't want to pay what he was, whatever his agent or whatever was wanting. So with Darby coming in, I think it's more of a gamble on Peyton's part because, there are some people in Broncos country who are okay with the decision, and there are some people in Broncos country who are kind of questionable and, see it more as a Band-Aid. But I think that Peyton is kind of looking at it from where we were last season in terms of just how deep we were in terms of, cornerback depth. His injury history does bring a bit of worry because, Ronald Darby has been injured quite a few times. So hopefully in a Vic Fangio scheme, this is something that he can work around with and, he can actually fluctuate and be important and not look like just a waste of money.
There's a few things that I said that were controversial, I suppose, in some of the chats. I might be one of the few people actually really liked the move. I thought he was a great fit for Fangio's system. I think he's a little bit scheme versatile, which is good. His deal is structured in such a way that it's effectively a 2-year deal, and if the team absolutely hates the level of play they're getting, he is an outright cut with no cap hit in the third year. So I think that's great. I think that's a smart kind of team decision. And they signed him this year when players were willing to take less, right? So that helps the team out. Because the contract is structured in such a way where it's kind of more team friendly, just because players are kind of willing to give a little to get a little. And the one thing that I think is really important in the Fangio scheme is he asks his guys, cornerbacks and everyone alike, to kind of step back and almost wait for that initial kind of, and then diagnose. You need closing speed in order to be a defensive back in a Fangio scheme like that. I think Darby has it, and I also think he has really good football IQ. So what's important there, because of the Fangio scheme and the style, is you have to be able to diagnose the play really quickly right off the top and then go and do. And what we saw from AJ Bouye is he was slower at diagnosing the play. But once he did, he knew what he needed to do, but then he couldn't close fast enough on the play in order to kind of make up that speed and that difference. It's actually one of those things that I was watching some recent kind of stuff and film on. I was noticing that some of the missed tackles at some of the angles from some of the Justin Simmons plays, a lot of that was very, very similar. Justin Simmons is sharp as a tack, don't get me wrong, but in order for you to make up, once you diagnose the play and you're going against maybe a faster wide receiver or a faster player, in order for you to make up that speed, you have to have the speed in order to catch up to them. Right? And if you don't have the speed to catch up to them, like that requisite athleticism, then you're at a disadvantage. And then you have to then be the person to diagnose the play even faster. And again, you have to have that kind of balance and mix. So I think Darby's a great fit for Fangio's system. And again, at a 2-year deal, I'm not complaining.
Very well said. Travis Tarbox, thanks for watching the show. And he says, Lindsay should be getting paid and we should be letting Gordon go. Lindsay is an animal, who never fumbles. Denver Broncos for life. You know what? At this point, letting Gordon go probably wouldn't be the best idea because you'd be hit with a $4 million cap hit or something like that. So, I mean, he's in the second year of his contract. And last season, he didn't play, up to what he got paid, but he also didn't play bad neither. When he needed to kind of step in and, fill in the gap for an injured Lindsay, he went out there and, he did his job. Now, granted, he did have 4 fumbles, which is never okay. But hopefully that's something he can learn to work on during the offseason. So I'm honestly, I don't know what to say. I feel like I've already spoken my piece on this, Rich. I really do hope that Lindsay doesn't get an offer from another team and, go elsewhere.
Well, that's the thing is I think you can get multiple offers, and that's kind of where I stand on it. I think at the end of the day, this is kind of where, and this is the honest question that I pose. In fact, I would love to get some feedback from anyone listening here, and feel free to just hammer the chat, and maybe we can pull some up on the screen. If we believe Drew Lock can develop further this year, which I think he can, I think he absolutely can, would it not be in our best interest as a team to let go of Shurmur and bring in a more dynamic, competent offensive coordinator? Because that would likely then be the best option for not only our team, but also for Drew Lock. So if that's the case, then someone like Philip Lindsay actually has a much greater value to us as a team. And for those that think that Shurmur actually had a good offensive coordinator career, he averaged in the mid-20s for his entire career, like right across the board. He's averaged in the mid-20s in terms of production and rankings and all that kind of stuff. So he's and for those of you that need the math on that, that's below 50%.
Vic says Gordon played well towards the end of the season, really well. And that's exactly my whole point, is that it wasn't like Melvin Gordon did what he did with the Chargers the year before, where he sat out and he was trying to demand a huge ton of money, basically being a diva. And when he saw that he wasn't getting what he wanted in the trade market, it's like, oh, okay, I'll come back and play. But that ended up hurting him more than helping him, because he didn't get the money he wanted. The Chargers were actually playing pretty well without him. They found what they had in Austin Eckler, and I forget who else they were running behind that scheme. So I think Melvin Gordon learned his lesson from that, and hopefully he can stay out of trouble from now until week 1 of the football season. And if he does drink, to not drive, take a freaking Uber.
Yeah, I mean, if you have 4 or 5 glasses of Pinot Grigio, it is not a good idea to get behind the wheel of a car. Let's just call a duck a duck.
Capital G 26,000, I guess that's how you say it. Welcome to the show, my friend. He says, I think Drew's going to be okay. We got some talent. We just need to gel. Now, that's a very well said statement there, Rich, because I've been saying that for the longest, since the start of before last season, that this offense just needs to gel. This just needs to gel. But unfortunately, you can only say that for so long, where it's like you're just sitting there and it's like, well, how much gelling does this machine need to take? It's people grow impatient. So I said this last week on the Mahai Roundtable podcast, that I'm supporting Drew Lock because I'm putting my faith in him if he starts this year. But if Drew Lock comes back and he gives us exactly what he gave us last season, or he gives us something worse, me personally, I can't look at him and be behind him for the following season and say, hey, look, give Drew another chance. And we've already seen that most quarterbacks, veteran quarterbacks, are starting to find their, for their other homes. And the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes is still open. But if that comes to fruition, Rich, I think that if Denver does decide to bring a veteran quarterback into this team to try to motivate Drew Lock and it doesn't work, that there is really no other thing you can't really have any more sympathy for the kid. Maybe he's just not it. Maybe the offense that the Broncos are running are just not working up to Drew's standards.
I'm going to try and call out the comments if we can bring them up on the screen. If we can leave this one here, the gel. Thanks. So my question is, what elements of the offense still need to gel? We've had 16 games and a bunch of practices. So at some point, the offense is what it is, and the offensive coordinator is either good or is bad. And more importantly, the offensive coordinator is either creative enough and capable enough to scheme up plays for the players that the team has on the team to do well. So that's part of the reason why we keep on hearing the Patriot way, blah, 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 and all that kind of nonsense, aside from the cheating, I had to throw that in there, is because they always adapt. So in the playoffs, they realized that they were going against teams that were weak against the run. What did they do? They put their fullback in the front and they say, plow them down. And for us, we can barely get a game plan together just on a normal, business week where we're seeing free runners around the outside or free runners in the inside. And that is a problem for a younger quarterback that is trying to digest and improve in the middle of the season. Now, that in itself, I actually have a problem with. You kind of called it out earlier. They're 6'10", is Drew came in last year, and I've said this a couple times before, he didn't really fix anything. He didn't come in and having course corrected any one of his major problems. I would have liked to have seen him at least fix one, and I would have been totally okay with that. If this year he comes in, you're being super generous, by the way. I give him like a couple of games, and if he hasn't shown that he has identified like one of those 2 or 3 issues that he had to work on, ball placement being the biggest one, to me at least, I will struggle at that point personally to say yes, let's go, because at that point there he's shown me he's had 2 years to kind of correct the same thing and hasn't done it right. Can we just pull up Mo's comment, please?
Yeah, that's what I was going to lead into.
And I agree. This is exactly where I was going at with my comment, which is, in every team, when you're looking at your team as a bigger picture, like looking at it from like the GM's angle and the vantage point of the GM and above, you have to assess your team, and you have to assess the team from a very, very high level. And you say, either we think the quarterback is basically beyond repair, and we don't believe that he can get over kind of his own limitations. And at that point there, you might say maybe he's a career backup. Fair enough. Or you say, do you know what? We think the offensive coordinator is holding our team back. And I believe the latter to be true. So, and this is actually part of my reasoning. So if we can we pull up Chad's comment there, please? Because I see them tying together. Chad, I appreciate you coming in every week. I really do. This is actually kind of the jumping off point for me. We saw Philip Lindsay in a different style offense, one that was, we'll say, differently schemed. Okay, not saying better or worse. I'm just saying differently schemed. We saw Philip Lindsay produce 2 1,000-yard seasons back to back.
Yeah. Let me just say, for our audio listeners who aren't watching us live, Mohammed's comment was he agrees with what Richie Rich says. Shurmur needs to go, but they are keeping him. It is not fair to evaluate Locke while Shurmur is still the offensive coordinator.
Agreed.
And Chad adds, anyone else happy we didn't waste money on a backup quarterback just to push Locke? Use the money to pay Philip Lindsay.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. Sorry, I apologize to the audio listeners. I will get better at reading the comments aloud prior to commenting on them. But I completely agree, and this is kind of where I was going with kind of the general comment, and this is where I am leaning more towards. I'm critical of Locke, but I still believe that he has the opportunity and the ability. I think, and this is where KR and I actually I think agree, is Shurmur ain't it. And I agree with that 100%, because you already have a running back that has shown that Lindsay can play well. full stop, period. And while Drew was a young, kind of relatively inexperienced QB, he still showed splashes here and there. My problem with Locke personally is I would like to see Locke show more good than bad, and then have a few of those plays where you look at it and say, "Oh, I hope he gets that better. I hope he does. I hope he does that. I hope he fixes that. I hope he does something better." And in turn, I think what we saw with Shurmur is I think Shurmur brought out actually all of the worst features in Locke. I think Shurmur put Locke in some of the worst positions he possibly could be in. Free runners coming off the edge, free runners up the middle, not scheming to block guys with chips and all that kind of stuff. That's a problem. And you can't have a QB learn that way when they're already struggling to process things fast enough. And that is an issue for Locke as well as processing speed.
Very well said, my friend. Albert Knoppers adds, Drew can take us to the playoffs. Shurmur needs to scheme to the team's strengths, not to his game book. And that's actually a very well said statement there, Rich. And that's basically what every Broncos fan is basically yelling into their TV screens all last season, is just kind of, we were expecting to see what we saw towards the end of 2019. But then again, we forget that was a Scangarello run offense. We were looking at an offense that in front of our very eyes was starting to find their groove. They were starting to find their work the way they were supposed to work. And it only took one change by either Fangio or John Elway to just come in and say, Scangarello's out, here comes Shurmur. Everybody in the offense has to learn a whole new playbook. We're bringing in a new running back. We're bringing in Jerry Jeudy. We're bringing in, rookies off of the draft. So just go out there and score touchdowns. And the fact that everybody wasn't able to not just avoid the injury bug, but just kind of work their way around, just trying to keep themselves up. I'm trying to pick my words carefully. Just pick themselves up and not give in to, the Broncos aren't playing well, or, just trying to play the blame game. It ends up hurting the team. So I need Drew Lock to step up. If he's the starting quarterback anyway, I need him to step up and bring in that leadership that when, when the ship is starting to go down, somebody needs to be a leader and try to save it from completely sinking.
Agreed. If we can bring up perfect. Thank you. So just for the audio listeners here, see, I told you I get better at it. I think Denver will be much better this year because they have Vaughn, Sutton, and James back, and last year's picks with experience now. So I just want to quickly kind of jump through each of these kind of individual points here. So James has not played a full season in several seasons now, and he opted out of last year. I can give him a pass for opting out last year due to his circumstances because he had a newborn and there was a complete uncertainty in terms of COVID. So, I can give him a complete pass for the 2020 season. Where I can't give him a complete pass, and where I believe his teammates have actually held him to task in interviews, is what he did in 2019, where there was multiple reports where he was not perfectly, but certainly healthy enough to play, and he still was pushing not to. Now, when you look at Sutton, the one thing I will push back on this comment here, is it Fallen Angels? Is it takes about a year, or right near about a full year, for any NFL player not named Adrian Peterson, who is a freak, to recover from an ACL. And as I understood it, Sutton's was not good. Like he hurt it badly. So I think we need to hold back and kind of adjust our expectations down a little bit for Courtland Sutton. I think he will come back and he will have flashes where he looks good. And I think his all the repairs that have been done in his knee will start to ache. We need to pull back. So I think it's important that we just pull back on those. And with regards to the other, with Vaughn, we have Vaughn, but what version of Vaughn are we getting back? He was injured all year too. I mean, his workout videos look great, but we've seen other players post some pretty great workout videos and not come back and play up to the level that, their teams expected them to. I just think we need to adjust our expectations as fans down a little bit and then become pleasantly surprised if they're able to excel.
Very well said, my friend Rich. Very well said. Travis Tarbox, he adds, I'm in total agreement on Locke. If he's terrible this season, it's time to find a different quarterback. So you see here, Rich, there are people that agree with me. So I know I don't look like crazy when I go on social media or when I'm on a podcast saying I defend Drew Lock, and everybody just looks at me and goes, oh, why? He's terrible. Look what he did. Yada, yada, yada. But and I'm looking at this from more than just orange-colored glasses. I've been hearing that term a lot lately. I just like to, I don't know. I'm kind of like, I see in Drew Lock what John Elway saw and John Elway picked him, mind you. So I'm just trying to give the kid a chance. Now, I know there's a new GM. It's a whole different show. And there's a chance that Drew Lock might not even start this coming season, or that if he plays terrible, like you said, Rich, that he gets pulled and he has to ride the pine and hopefully try to find some motivation in him to try to get going. I understand all that. And if that does happen, I'm good with it, because if he doesn't play the way any better than he did last year, he deserves to get benched. He deserves to ride the bench. He needs to clear up the mistakes that he made before. There's no more excuses. You can't use the pandemic anymore. You can't always blame it on injuries. You need to be the guy. The quarterback, as they say, is the most important position in a football team. So if you can't be the guy to, not just always be the one to try to bring your team back from a possible loss and you win the game, then maybe this isn't the place for you. And, you could try your luck elsewhere.
I agree. Just the other thing I do want to bring up, as we're kind of running closer to the end of the time here, about 20 minutes left or so. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to bring up that one of the huge highlights for me, and I tweeted out to both Shelby and his wife, was the fact that Shelby Harris has been re-signed by the Denver Broncos. Mm-hmm. He's really one of those players, for me at least, and I don't know if you share this as well, but where I really, really wanted to see him back in Denver. He has that like a certain personality, and he just comes off as just being a genuinely nice person. And mm-hmm. you always like to see people that work hard, that have are involved heavily in the community, involved heavily with their family. You like to see them succeed, and certainly having Shelby back, and it also doesn't hurt the fact that he's a really good football player. You like to see those guys get the contracts they deserve, and it's just really, I'm really, really happy to see Shelby back in Denver.
Very well said. Randy Onkar, thanks for watching the show. He says, so now we will be in a position to have to choose to pay Vaughn or Simmons next year. That's not smart. You extend one this year and the other next year, and these two guys are two of the best players on the team. Well, yeah, they are the best, but you also have to take in mind that as players age, obviously their talents, their physicality starts to take a hit. Injuries start to play a big role, and how they go out on the field and present themselves. These are all factors that every team has to take into consideration coming into this in this league. I mean, take the Las Vegas Raiders, for example. They cut their center today, if I'm not mistaken, who's one of their best offensive linemen on that line. So I mean, there's a lot of stuff. It usually comes down to salary cap, especially this season. Teams are trying to stay under the cap so they can avoid taking a hit. That's all understandable. But when you make decisions like that and you put your quarterback in a pretty bad predicament, that can spell a lot of trouble. Look at what Kansas City did. They went out and they got Joe Thuney, but they had to give up two of their best offensive players who didn't even play in the Super Bowl. So as good as Joe Thuney is as a guard? Yeah. He can't guard everybody on that defensive line. So Kansas City's, even though they plugged in one hole, it's like a dam. You plug in one hole and there are other holes starting to leak. And pretty soon, if you don't fix it, dam's going to bust.
So perhaps an unpopular opinion, so brace ourselves, please, is how many people can honestly say that Vaughn is as fast as he once was, particularly back in Super Bowl 50? I mean, one of the things that really did separate Vaughn as being Von Miller, having that kind of cachet behind the name, was that first step. I mean, you hear all these players in, the NFL 100, and you hear the interviews and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things where I can't remember who it was hilarious though. I wish I remembered who it was, because it was a notable player, and the guy said, "Oh, I know, it was Phillip Rivers." That's who it was. It was Phillip Rivers. He said, "I literally caught the ball was in the air coming at me, and Vaughn was already beside me."
Mm-hmm.
And that's the type of speed that Vaughn had as his first step. And I mean, a guy like Phillip Rivers, he's seen it all. He's like you could hear the tone in his voice. It was nothing shy of admiration.
Yeah.
Right. And that says all you need to know. Now, Vaughn does not have that speed anymore. And he has had multiple injuries, which I believe have likely taken a toll on that speed, which is why he's tried to focus a little bit more on balancing his game and becoming more of a run stopper as well as a pass rusher. The problem is, if we need a pass rusher, then we need a pass rusher. And if Vaughn can't get it done like he used to be able to, then other guys are going to need to be brought in order to fill the hole that Vaughn has left on the team. And then he can no longer command the salary that he's going to try and command.
Mm-hmm. No, and you know what would be a perfect example? I don't mean to cut you off, Rich. Guys, if you follow the Denver Broncos on social media, they just re-uploaded the video of all of Von Miller's sacks from his very first sack in 2011 to his last sack in 2019. And I watched that video. And when you see the progression of just how amazing Von Miller was, Von Miller, in some cases, he didn't have to beat you with just strength. He could duck around a lineman, just bend low enough where he didn't even have to put a knee on the ground, and he could just get around the lineman. I think one of the best ones I saw was when a game against the Jets, he pushed the lineman damn near on his butt just to get to Mark Sanchez. I mean, it was phenomenal. So what I'm trying to say to you, Broncos country, is that, and this isn't just with Von Miller, this is with every pass rusher. We had the same thing when we signed DeMarcus Ware. DeMarcus Ware was a great pass rusher when he came to Denver, but you couldn't put him out there every single snap because you saw what happened. You put him out there, and then the back injury started to flare up, and the rib and all this stuff. So I really want Von to flourish when he comes into 2021, because I'm pretty sure he's going to want to put some tape when he goes to the bargaining table, he says, "Hey, look, I still got it. I'm not as fast as I used to be, but I can still get to the quarterback. I can still be a threat. I can still make, draw double teams where, okay, you double team Von, but Bradley Chubb is open, or anybody else on the line can get there." So even though Von Miller cannot be the normal one person threat anymore, he can still be a giant valuable asset to this team.
I think your comment on DeMarcus Ware is basically spot on. At this point in Von's career, he is effectively DeMarcus Ware when he came to Denver, right? Like when you look at the career trajectory, DeMarcus Ware was like a one-man wrecking ball when he was in Dallas. Dallas opted to not pay DeMarcus Ware that top-tier salary. Von was still on his rookie deal, and they were able to bring DeMarcus Ware in as like a nice complementary piece. That's where Von is right now. So the question for Von is he willing to do what DeMarcus Ware seemingly wasn't when he was in Dallas? Or is he willing to adjust and allow for the new Von over in Chubb, effectively, which is what the Broncos are hoping Chubb will turn into? And then is he willing to be the DeMarcus Ware to to the Von Chubb on the other side there that we're hoping that Bradley Chubb turns into? I just wanted to quickly call out a couple people in the chat here. I wanted to thank you guys for joining us. We have Kevin Dandino, Bob Skinner, Jerry Holland, Mundungus Creevy.
That's the boss.
That's the boss man. Randy Ankar. I hope I pronounced your name right, Randy. Travis Tarbox, Fallen Angels, and Ian C. Raider. I just wanted to say thank you very much. And then we have some of our regulars and Albert Knoppers. Thank you very much. And
I'll let you take this one.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna let you take this one.
Oh, you want me to take this?
Yeah.
Shelby's a huge part of the defense. Yeah, so Shelby is a huge part of our defense for sure. He's a leader and motivational player for the team. I could not agree more. You made a comment earlier, 6'10", and I wanted to tie your comment to this comment because I see them as being very much intertwined. On every team, you need a leader. And Shelby Harris, when we were not doing particularly well in some games, came over to the sideline and just started laying into people, including our head coach, which maybe not the best move in the world, but he still did it. And that's because he has passion for the game of football. And as a fan and as just wanting the Broncos to actually start winning games again, that I appreciate wholeheartedly, is passion to try and win. Shelby Harris has proven to be a leader on our team, and that's why he got paid. And also it helped a situation that he put up really, really good stats and proved that he could do so year over year. He's able to stack 2 good seasons back to back. And to do so at his age showed that he's probably going to be able to do that for a few more years anyway. So good for him, and I hope he stays in Denver for even longer past his contract.
Yeah, I totally agree, Kevin, Dan, and what you said, Rich. Shelby Harris, I mean, he's one of my favorite players on that defensive line. I was going to say offense. So, and it actually works out well because now Denver can kind of start digging in the draft in terms of, maybe trying to find, an uncovered gem while we have Vic Fangio and Ed Donatel in Denver. We still yet to see what Mike Purcell can do in terms of playing a full season. Actually, I take that back. He did play a full season in 2018, right? Okay.
Well, he came in. I don't believe he started. I think he spelled some of the plays, and then he started to start kind of midway through the season.
Right.
Again, I'm going purely off of memory.
I think he rotated with Wolf. I'm not sure, but
yeah.
My point is that he plays an entire season where we already know who Mike Purcell is. We already know what he can do because he came in from a Vic Fangio scheme from years past. So, I mean, I'm really excited to see what this defensive line can do. And the only thing that kind of scares me about free agency, Rich, and I'm talking about this in general, is just that whoever we bring in, and this is, and actually I'll kind of backtrack a little bit. What I've been hearing a lot today was, and I heard this from Shannon Sharp, everybody in free agency is overpaid. You overpay for them. Everybody, every single player that's been signed so far. But that's the risk that teams need to take, because you're judging them from tape that you saw of what they did with another team last season, and you're hoping that they can bring that success into your team, in transition. And I'm talking about free agents coming in from other teams. I'm not talking about re-signing players. If you re-sign a player, that's nothing new. You already know what you're going to get. In that case, then you're just expecting that what they did last year good, they bring over to next year, and what they did bad, they can correct and play better. So with that being said, obviously last season, Jarrell Casey was a huge signing for Denver. We were all excited. And to me, he was a bust and it didn't work out. And I'm trying to keep that vibe away from me from Ronald Darby, because I want to be excited that Ronald Darby is a Bronco cornerback. But every time I go on social media, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to read this after we go off the air, Rich, that, it's going to be like, oh, somebody bringing up his injury list, or, all the boneheaded plays that Darby had as an Eagle or as a member of the Washington football team. I just hope that we don't end up in that situation again where we're like a few weeks into the season and it's like, oh, well, that guy was a waste of money. Okay,
so let's combine 2 things here. So if you're going to take that line of thought, then you're going to try and tell me that Philip Lindsay is now washed up and can no longer play. Because, I mean, by the way, I don't agree with that at all. I think he can absolutely play, and he could probably play really, really well, probably back at a darn near Pro Bowl level. What it comes down to is what defensive scheme you're in or what offensive scheme you're in. So we saw Philip Lindsay with a different offensive scheme be able to absolutely just tear teams apart because he was able to have a much bigger hole and he ran through it and guys couldn't tackle him because he's just too fast. Now, flip the coin on Darby. I think Darby's in a similar situation. if you go in a scheme where you don't fit particularly well in, then you're going to start making mistakes. That doesn't mean you're not a good player. That means you're in the wrong scheme for your skill sets. I mean, the other thing to look at is Fangio and this team and this defensive staff, in my opinion, from what you're looking at, from what we saw last year, we had 6 defensive backs on IR by the end of the season. 6.
Yeah.
Okay, like half a dozen defensive backs on IR. I think 3 or 4 of which had torn ACLs. I have some questions about our training, strength and conditioning staff, just to be clear. So, okay, so just throwing that out there. And so when you have that many DBs on IR and you have that many players hurt, I mean, did anyone look at Bryce Callahan last year and say, well, he's always hurt, he was never good? I mean, he had Pro Bowl level plays all of last year. So I think Darby can absolutely play well for us, period.
No, I do agree too. And depth is going to be really important this year because hopefully Denver's never in a situation where we're picking at the bottom of the barrel in terms of, bringing in cornerbacks and who's ever available that's not affected by COVID and just wants to play football. And I'm not trying to take away anything from who the last couple of quarterbacks we had weeks 16 and 17. I mean, I don't blame those losses on them because it's like you were brought in and you've never played for that team before. And it's like you need to learn all of this in a few days' time and, go out there and try to win a football game. That's totally different. But what I'm trying to say to you, Rich, is what my whole rant was. I'm talking about other players coming from other teams to Denver. Re-signing Philip Lindsay is something that I agree should happen. But the way things are looking at it now, it doesn't seem like it's going to happen. Like you said at the beginning of the show, Philip Lindsay is going to get a bunch of offers from other teams because they're going to see value in him. And I'm pretty sure there's going to be an offensive coordinator who's looking at Lindsay and going to the GM and says, hey, I can work with that guy. Go get me that guy. You know
where he's going to be scary is if he goes to the Ravens.
Yeah, I've been hearing Ravens. I heard Patriots earlier from Boggins, I believe. So, and that's what you kind of don't want to, as a fan of a football team, you don't really want to hear other players. It's kind of like, kind of like crows picking at, I don't know, but but that's just the way that's football. Unfortunately, you can't keep everybody on your team. Sometimes other players want to go out and, make more money or see greener pastures or whatever. Somebody on the chat said that Emmanuel Sanders signed with the Bills. So, Sanders he's going from team to team and he's finding success. He went to a Super Bowl 2 years ago and last year he went to the playoffs with the Saints. So, there is hope out there, Rich. I'm just trying to say that I guess this is all new to us because we weren't expecting. We're so used to the Elway way where it's like, okay, he goes and he gets one big signing like he did with Jawan James, but it's like one of those really questionable signings where you even have media of that team kind of poking fun at you, or when there's better options out there, but you don't want to spend the money. So I guess this is all a new transition for all of us as Broncos fans where we don't really know what George Paton is going to do because it's his first time as a GM, but we're so excited and nervous at the same time.
Can I jump in there just for a sec?
Sure.
Okay, so guys, here's what Paton has done for us now. We signed Jawan James, and the Miami media laughed at us. And so did the Miami football fans. So like, you got that guy? Okay. We signed Darby, and the Washington media and the Washington fans said, oh, we really wanted him back. Okay, can we see? Like, we can see the difference between the two, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, but nothing else, as a Broncos fan, we should be encouraged, right? This is exactly what we have been missing as a team: is what appears to be competent jamming. As much as I loved Elway as a player, he did an awesome job as a Denver quarterback. We have to be honest with ourselves. Yes, there was a Super Bowl that was under his belt. However, everything else aside from Peyton Manning coming here, which if we're gonna go back and look at what Peyton said when he came to Denver, He pointed to Pat Bolin as the reason he came to Denver. He did not put Elway on the pedestal to say that this is why I came to Denver. And we just need to be honest with ourselves. I am very, very pleased with what I've seen so far with George Paton. Now, please go get Sheldon Rankins.
Hey, I'll stand behind that. But this comment is actually going to lead us into the end of our show today, Rich, and that's Chad asking us, do we have a podcast on Apple? Which is a very interesting question because, and I don't know if I've actually said this at the end of our show, but a day after we air, I upload an audio copy of this exact podcast onto Anchor, which gets pushed out into other big podcast sites like Apple, Amazon. I forget the other ones, but it gets spread out. So if you can't join us live, you're more than always welcome to join us on the audio version. And if you're listening to us on Anchor and you want to be a supporter of the show, we really do appreciate it. Shout out to Chris Hernandez for continuing to be a supporter of the show on Anchor as well. So with that said, guys, that's going to do it for us today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Bring up Albert's last comment there. I appreciate that, Albert. His last one. Yeah, the very last one.
Yeah,
we really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, like and share this show, guys, if you enjoyed today's show. Follow us at MHRT Podcast on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. If you want to follow us directly, you can follow Richie at RICHIRICHEH, myself at A6, the number 6, FT10 Mexican, all together. You can follow us on there and you can tweet us stuff. If you have any, just talk Broncos, just talk football. Richie and I are always happy to talk to you guys. We don't always have to wait until Tuesdays to come on the air. And, if you're with Richie, you can have a beer. If you're with me, you can have a cup of coffee. We're all friends online. So, and Richie, I believe, speaks a little. You speak French, Rich?
Je parle un peu de français, oui.
Yeah, see, Rich speaks French y yo hablo español. So, no siempre tiene que hacer en inglés, amigos. Si hablan español, síganme y mándenme una correspondencia y vamos a hablar fútbol, And if you follow Rich, what I just said, but in French, Yeah. So with that being said, make sure you guys tune in on Thursdays to watch Mile High Roundtable with myself, Mike, Glenn, and Mr. Boggins, whose first name I forgot for a second, Marcus, thank you. And we stream at 6 o'clock Central, 7 o'clock Eastern, and I forget what time zone Marcus is in. He's somewhere in Washington State. But just follow us at Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter for all the show times for Broncos Talk and for Mile High Roundtable.
I appreciate all the questions, guys. Please keep it coming. Share it to all the other fellow Broncos fans, and you have yourself a great night, and see you next week. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Chad, Albert, Mohammed, Travis, Jerry. I'm going to try to run your names as quick as I can. Bob, Mundungus, Kevin, Randy, Ian, KR, the Queen. Thank you so much for stopping by and visiting us. Vic, Richie, Rich, you're already there, but I'm thanking you anyway. Chad, Miguel, and anybody I missed. Oh, yeah, Miguel. I said Miguel. And my good friend, Shannon, thank you so much for being a supporter and listener of the show. Thank you so much. For Richie Rich, I'm Adan Diaz. Have a good night, everybody, and we will see you all next week.